So, we're going to talk about the weaponization of social capital. When an individual is confronted with serious allegations or public records, responding with "I am a top 30 influencer" is a classic diversionary tactic. In sociology and psychology, this is known as an appeal to authority or social status shielding. Now, how is this dangerous? By citing influence, the person is subtly suggesting that their value to the movement or their reach on social media outweighs their past actions. It creates a hierarchy where the person's platform becomes a hostage, suggesting that if you cancel or hold them accountable, the movement loses a vital asset. Now let's talk about the correlation to pandering and exploitation. Pandering and exploitation often rely on the promise of benefit. By emphasizing influence, the individual is practicing enticement, signaling to followers that proximity to them offers social or professional upward mobility, which silence potential whistleblowers who fear losing that proximity. That brings me to the art of suggestion and coercive mannerisms. The art of suggestion involves planting the idea that the individual is reformed, enlightened, or targeted by the system without ever being transparent or providing transparent proof. By discussing high-profile cases like the Epstein files, the individual aligns themselves with the role of a truth seeker. The illusion of alignment. This is a manipulation tactic where a perpetrator adopts the language of the victim. By speaking on human trafficking or exploitation, they hide in plain sight. This creates a psychological barrier for the community. How could they be a predator if they are fighting predators? That brings me to coercive control. When an influencer uses their following to potentially swarm or silence an advocate like Simona Barakub, they are using proximate coercion. They don't have to attack the advocate themselves. They simply suggest the advocate is a quote-unquote hater or a quote-unquote distraction, and the audience performs the silencing. That brings me to pandering, enticement, and the quote-unquote expert persona. The shift from the person that used to be to the persona of Dr. Christy Perez involves the acquisition of credibility markers, that is, title, influence, and degrees. That then allows for the infiltration of sensitive spaces. In politics and campaign spaces, access is everything. If an individual with a history of sexual exploitation or human trafficking, as is seen in the Douglas County Sheriff's Report involving Dr. Christy Perez, enters these spaces without transparency, they are essentially bypassing the informed consent of the entire community, and that is unacceptable. The risk of relapse and recidivism. In advocacy, we deal with vulnerable populations, victims of the very crimes listed in those charges. Allowing an individual with a history of pandering and traffic into these spaces without total transparency is a failure of the community vetting. It provides a hunting ground where the power dynamic is naturally skewed in favor of the leader or the quote-unquote influencer. That brings me to the precedent of accountability. Eric Swalwell. This is about a broader point on institutional integrity. Political versus ethical standards, for example. If public officials are held to standards regarding allegations, then grassroots movements, which often lack the formal oversight of the government, must be even more rigorous. Transparency is the bare minimum. There is a difference between restorative justice and unfettered access. Restorative justice requires radical honesty and accountability. When an individual hides behind a name change or a top 30 status, they are choosing obfuscation over accountability. So to summarize the danger here, the danger lies in the normalization of the predator. When a community allows an influencer to use their status to bypass questions about a history of exploitation, the community effectively tells victims that reach is more important than safety. By corroborating the patterns of behavior, suggestion, enticement, and the use of social status, you highlight that this isn't just a past mistake. It is about a current methodology of manipulation that mirrors the very tactics used in the crimes for which they were originally charged. The bottom line here is the supplemental arrest report involving this person from 2011 lists them with extremely serious charges, including sexual exploitation of children and trafficking of persons. If this individual is operating in spaces that involve children, trafficking victims, and other vulnerable indigenous communities under a new identity without disclosure, the risk of predatory grooming of the entire movement is specifically high. We have an obligation to oust any person like this. Predators do not belong in activist and advocacy spaces. They do not belong being platformed by people that are out here saying that they're fighting fascism, and the very same types of people who are out here trafficking and exploiting other human beings in these manners. You don't get to just change who you are and then think you can bury the past and then take victim stories and insert yourself into victim spaces where they're supposed to be safe and then start acting like you're some kind of a hero. Because all that is a snake that's changed their skin. It's still a snake at the end of the day. Take care of each other and look out for the predators amongst your brood.